The bad dog feeling was fading, and so was the pain in his nose. He started up toward the house to see if the boy might be around. He had gotten used to the big yellow school bus that came to pick the boy up every morning and which dropped him back off again in mid-afternoon. But this last week the school bus had not shown up with its flashing eyes and its yelling cargo of children. The boy was always at home. Usually he was out in the barn, doing things with the man. Maybe the yellow school bus had come again today. Maybe not. He would see. He had forgotten about the hole and the nasty taste of the batwing. His nose hardly hurt at all now. Cujo breasted his way easily through the high grass of the north field, driving up an occasional bird but not bothering to give chase. He had had his chase for the day, and his body remembered even if his brain did not. He was a St. Bernard in his prime, 5 years old, nearly 200 pounds in weight, and now, on the morning of June 16, 1980, he was pre-rabid. And that is an excerpt from the book I'll be reviewing today. The title is Cujo, and the author is Stephen King. Hey, what's up everybody? This is DeathGroundReviews, the monster that devours horror, suspense, and all those things the fantastic. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends that happen to be voracious readers just like you. And by the way guys, the monster is always hungry, so feel free to feed it with suggestions of future book reviews, and feed it with your comments in the comment section. I definitely want to get a good discussion going, so without wasting any more time, let's get the ball rolling. The world was full of monsters, and they were all allowed to bite the innocent and the unwary. That's a quote from the novel Cujo by Stephen King, a story about fate and chance, and how cruel and brutal fate and chance can be in our lives. So what's the origin? What's the inspiration behind this novel that I personally see as a classic in the suspense genre, published in 1981. At the time, Stephen King had moved his family to London, England, with the intention of gaining inspiration. In fact, his publishing company had started a marketing ploy that was stating that because of London's haunted history and that it was a place where so many great supernatural tales had come to be, that surely the master of horror Stephen King would be inspired with his most frightening ghost story of all time. This was not the case, though. It turned out that Mr. King struggled with writer's block while he was living in London, and his family was quite uncomfortable living in the cold, damp house that they were renting at the time. Stephen ultimately decided to return to his home in Maine, but he didn't come home completely empty-handed, you see. While in London, he read a news article about a young boy who was killed by a St. Bernard. This news story stuck with him. The seed was planted, so to speak. Stephen King has always described his generating story idea process as two unrelated ideas coming together to make something new. So for instance, in his novel Carrie, on one level it's about high school bullying, but then on another level it's about telekinesis. Both levels serve one another to drive the plot along to some intersecting climax. In the end of Carrie, she uses her telekinetic power to kill everybody at her prom along with her fanatical mother. Cujo, on the other hand, is a completely different beast. Yes, the story does have different levels. Its most basic level is a story about a mother and her son trapped in a stalled car by a rabid St. Bernard. King very well could have written a short story out of this moment. On another level, Cujo's about the Trenton family and their own personal turmoil and problems, marriage infidelity, Vic's debacle with the breakfast cereal marketing company he works for, Tad's difficulties with nightmares. Cujo is also about the Camber family, the owners of the dog Cujo. Charity Camber's worried about her son Brett, and if he's going to follow in the footsteps of his beer-swilling, carousing father. She's also really worried about the cold emptiness that will be left of her life after her son Brent moves on from her. Gary Purviere, the belligerent, drunk war veteran, also plays a role in the plot. His fly-blown, ramshackle home is a reflection of the reckless state of his mind. Gary represents how bad one's fate can be if abandoned to disintegration. What makes Cujo unique among King's canon is how all these plot lines run alongside each other, but there never seems to be a moment when they fully intersect in a climax. However, they are all still connected and still influence one another in an indirect fashion, much like how I imagine real life functions. The book shows us that everyone is interconnected in some way, from the bank teller you talked to that morning, to the mailman making deliveries, to your next-door neighbor mowing the lawn. Everyone's actions and decisions influences the environment in some way, and the changes in that environment influence somebody else's decisions. It's all interconnected. You can't help but feel sad for the novel's lead antagonist, Cujo. This was a dog that just wanted to live a normal dog life, running about chasing rabbits and such, and by bad luck it comes across a hole that stirs up the bat that infects it with the rabies. The book sums up this poignant moment very well with this quote: "It would perhaps not be amiss to point out that he had always tried to be a good dog. He had tried to do all the things his man and his woman and most of all his boy had asked or expected of him. He would have died for them if that had been required. He had never wanted to kill anybody. He had been struck by something, possibly destiny or fate, or only a degenerative nerve disease called rabies. Free will was not a factor." So yes, Cujo is a book about how brutal and cruel that fate and chance can be. But I also believe Cujo is a book about the cost of doing what's right and vice versa. For example, Donna Trenton, early on in the book, is a very passive and indecisive woman. She's not necessarily a bad person, but she definitely has her weaknesses. It takes her confrontation with Cujo to make her into an active and decisive person. But tragically, her transformation is too late. Her son ultimately dies. But in this tragic death of her son, it suggests that her marriage is saved. And so the book seems to be saying to us that it's sometimes our tragedies that save us. Sadly, this novel seems to be more well known for its nickname of the drunk book than for the quality of story it truly is. Stephen was struggling with alcoholism at the time he wrote the novel, and does admit that he can barely remember writing it. But don't dismiss it. This is one of King's most honest and poignant novels. Cujo is a winner, a classic of the thriller genre. So that wraps up my book review of Cujo by Stephen King. Please comment below what you think about the novel, and if you haven't read it yet, let me know if you're planning to read it. Thanks for watching.